Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Burnett. I work for Loc World Conference. I'm excited to be joined today by Professor Agnieszka Sarkowska to talk about an exciting keynote panel that she's going to be moderating at the upcoming Loc World 51 conference in Dublin in June. Agnieszka is a researcher, an academic teacher, an ex-translator, and an audiovisual translation consultant. She also co-founded AVT Masterclass, an online platform for professional audiovisual translation education. Hi, Agnieszka. How are you today?
Hi, Alex. Very well, thank you. Good to be here.
Great. Thanks a lot for talking with me today. So the title of your Loc World keynote panel is called Automation in Media Localization. The panelists for the discussion are going to be Belen Garcia from Deluxe Media, Vanessa Lecomte from the BBC, Volker Steinbiss from AppTech, and Alex Jaffe from Oona. So let's dive in and learn a little bit more about some of the topics and the key takeaways that attendees will be able to expect from this discussion. So multimedia localization has rapidly evolved in the last decade as both automation and now generative AI have transformed a process that used to be really a painstakingly slow and required human translators to kind of watch and to listen at every step and then transcribe every word by hand. Can you give us a brief overview on how this process has evolved with the introduction of automation and AI?
Yes, sure. You're right in saying that in recent years we've seen an unprecedented growth of automation, and that has happened in all types of media localization. So I'm talking about subtitling, captioning on the one hand, and more recently also in voiceover and in dubbing. Perhaps let's start with subtitling and captioning, where these various automation enhancing technologies are more mature, I'd say.
Okay.
So as you said, it used to be the case that a subtitler would manually transcribe and translate everything from scratch. Now it's very rarely the case. Now what can be harnessed is, for instance, automatic speech recognition technology, which can not only create a transcription of the text, but it can also align this text with the audio, that is to time the text to create the time codes. And not only that, professional subtitling software allows you to automate the QC process. So you can define a set of criteria. Let's say you're subtitling for Netflix, and Netflix has its own style guide. So in terms of the number of characters per line or reading speeds, you can set it all in subtitling software. You can run automatic checks and fixes with one click of a button, and it's done. Of course, you have to go through it again, but it's much easier to do right now than it used to be. And in terms of changes in workflows, we've also seen not only changes in terms of the technology, but also in terms of those organizational process, I would say. So in the past, many translations were done within one language pair, so from one language into another. Now, with the rise of streaming, or even actually before, it was back in the 1990s with the rise of the DVD, that we started seeing more multilingual workflows. So where companies needed to translate content not only into one language, but into multiple languages. So instead of, let's say you're a company and you own a library of content that you want to translate into 20 or 50 different languages. So what you don't do now, which you maybe used to do in the past, is you wouldn't send this content to subtitlers in different languages and asking them to time and to translate it. Okay. But instead, what companies do now, they create a so-called template, which is a time-coded transcription of the original content. Let's say you have content in English, so you create an English template, and then you make this template available to subtitlers who are asked to translate, but not to time code any longer, which is a process that is faster and also cost efficient, as you may expect. And yeah, so that happens in different language combinations, so from English into other languages, but we've also seen a rise in recent years in translation from non-English content. So let's say you have Korean series, right? And what you would do, you would create a pivot language template. So you would create from a translation from Korean into English, and it is from this English version, not from the original Korean content, that translators would translate. And there are different reasons for this. For instance, not very well, the lack of, let's say, subtitlers with those rare language pairs.
Sure.
And it has some advantages as well as disadvantages. And in terms of subtitling, one last thing, technology, of course, is the machine translation that is used in interlingual subtitling. And it is widely available now in subtitling tools, but I think for the media and entertainment industry, the quality of MT systems currently are not yet good
Still
enough.
Not there.
Not there yet. And one more thing, leaving subtitling and captioning, because we're talking about media localization in general. So in recent years, we've seen a rise in particular in dubbing and in voiceover. And there, in terms of technologies, we've seen an increasing use of text-to-speech technology, so synthetic speech systems that are used to voice that translation. And these technologies are also used for accessibility, and some streaming providers, for instance, are already there. They're offering text-to-speech voices to deliver audio description. And in terms of generative AI and large language models, the most interesting, perhaps, thing that we've seen the growth of is AI dubbing.
Okay.
So unlike in the case of traditional lip sync dubbing, where you had to match the translation to the lip movements of the original speakers that you can see on screen, now the video synthesis technology, which you may know, some of you may know as deep fakes, this technology allows you to manipulate the image so that you can change the speaker's mouth movements to match the translation or the text in a different language. And this technology is, on the one hand, absolutely amazing, I would say, and very scary.
Scary, yeah.
On the other hand, yes, and I think it may soon redefine everything we know and do in media localization.
Well, thanks a lot for that full overview and to see how far it's come and how many different aspects of it are being controlled by the AI and automation now is just really fascinating. And as you mentioned, also a little bit scary too. So let's look at the panel that you're going to have at LocWorld. So what are some of the types of media localization? You just mentioned a whole bunch of them. And does the current maturity of the individual technologies determine which ones the end users are choosing for their current projects? To expand on that, do you foresee organizations actually changing their strategy for their projects as new techniques continue to emerge and mature in their effectiveness?
Yes, so in the panel, we're planning to discuss all of these types of media localization that I mentioned. So subtitling, captioning, voiceover, and dubbing, and we'll also maybe delve into a little bit of media accessibility as well. And yes, the maturity levels of these technologies do definitely determine their current use and their future use. So I think the most mature technology currently would be the speech recognition technology with post-editing with a human in the loop. And it's, I suppose, can be used safely for all types of content, especially in English with single speakers without any noise background or overlapping speech. So that's a pretty well-established technology, particularly if you have some internal or low priority content, you can even use it, with automatic captions. However, when you have some high-end public-facing or media and entertainment content, linguists are absolutely necessary, to ensure the quality. And in terms of dubbing, I would say AI dubbing or even multilingual content creation using those avatars is also a viable option for those companies that have some educational, instructional, or corporate content, corporate videos. And some avatars and synthetic voices are getting better and it's rendering emotions. but as I said, not yet good enough for the media and entertainment industry. And I think a lot of processes that are, let's say, AI-enabled workflows are also happening in the back end. For instance, supporting the generation of scripts that are later used for both subtitling and dubbing, for some batch processing. Some companies are also looking into using AI for delivering some textual content that accompanies some franchises. Let's say they produce synopses for a TV series, etc. So I think the use of various technologies to localize audiovisual content by various organizations will depend on the type of content that they have,
Sure.
obviously on the budget, the language combinations, etc.
Great. So on this panel, you've got a group of experts, and what I really like and what's interesting to me is that they come from very diverse backgrounds. So you have an end client coming from the BBC, you have two MediaLoc technology providers, and also a person from an LSP that themselves is an end user of the technologies. Can you give us a little preview of what the different perspectives that the panelists will bring to the discussion? And do you think they're going to have differing viewpoints on what the future of media localization looks like?
Yes, thanks, Alex. I think that's actually a great question. So I think that technology companies obviously bring the technical know-how and also this enthusiasm for what's possible. And so they come up with those solutions, and we often see these solutions being promoted on their websites. They come to conferences and show you some bits and pieces and imply that would work in all sorts of contexts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are different types of automation solutions. So we're talking about ASR, automatic speech recognition. We're talking about machine translation in subtitling. So that's more UNA, let's say. In terms of AppTech, I expect a lot of expertise in automatic dubbing. So this sort of pipeline where you have automatic speech recognition of the original text, then it's machine translated, and then it's read out by text-to-speech software. So it's
Wow.
a sort of pipeline. For instance,
Mm-hmm.
if you're interested, what they're saying in China, on Chinese TV on the news, right? You can do automatic dubbing into English or German or whatever. And in the panel, I think we'll be able to confront this enthusiasm that is shown by these technology companies with the end clients, with the BBC and the LSP as well, who may or may not tone it down a little bit and explain what is it that they're currently using and what is it that is still missing and what exactly is needed at this stage. And BBC, everybody knows that owns a large library of content, and I'm hoping they will share some insights into how they handle media localization. What AI tools are they using currently, if any, and not only in terms of media localization, but also media access services. And finally, the LSP, so Belen from DLAX, I would say it's a kind of bridge in between. As you said, the LSP itself is an end user of these technologies. So I believe Belen will be able to say which of these technologies can actually be used at this stage in June 2024. For what purposes and what type of content, because I expect it really varies on the type of content. So we can expect to find out more from her or from them, how mature these technologies are for the corporate industry on the one hand, and which ones are not good enough for the media and entertainment industry, which has different quality benchmarks. And we'll also be talking in the panel about some legal issues and human issues related to automation, including voicing, copyrights, etc.
It's shaping up to be a really interesting discussion. And again, I just think you with the diverse panelists that you have, it's going to be really interesting to see where they disagree and the points where maybe the future looks a little bit different between them. So we're really excited. That panel, keynote panel, takes on the place on the morning of Friday, June 7th. It's at Lokeworld 51 in Dublin, Ireland, and we hope to see you all there. There's information available on the Lokeworld website at lokeworld.com. I do want to spend a moment to talk, in addition to that keynote panel, you're also going to be teaching a half-day media localization seminar on the pre-conference Global Toolbox Day. That's on Wednesday, June 5th. So unlike the Lokeworld main conference, where attendees basically just get to watch the panels and presentations, this media localization seminar provides an actual introduction to media localization and includes really a hands-on session where participants can actually try out some subtitling tools and learn how to, automate the process of transcription, timing, and translation. So how is the media localization seminar going to help participants to develop and execute on their first media localization strategy at their own organizations?
Yes, so in this workshop, we will cover, again, all types of media localization, subtitling, captioning, voiceover, and dubbing, but we will mainly focus on subtitling and captioning. We will also mention some media access services like audio description for the blind and partially sighted. There will be two parts to the workshop. First, I'll give a general overview of these types of localization. So maybe some of our viewers don't know what's the difference between voiceover and dubbing. So I'll explain all that. I'll give plenty of examples. We'll talk about where these different types of media localizations are used, which territories, what the quality indicators are, what type of content can be used with them. And in the second part, we'll do this hands-on session where participants will get a chance to try out some captioning and subtitling tools. They will be able to either use the video clips that they have, or if they don't have anything, I will provide them with some content, and they will be able to, understand really how to harness these technologies that we've been discussing in this interview today to automate their workflows and to achieve quality. Some companies in the previous editions, they had some content, but they didn't have any quality benchmarks. So I'll be providing the participants with some handouts like a subtitling style guide, which is like the first step to ensuring good quality subtitling and captioning in all organizations. I'll be giving out a media localization checklist and best practices guide in media accessibility. And so participants will be able to audit their content, the audiovisual content at their organizations to see if it's compliant with the regulations, if it's accessible to people with various disabilities, and they will be able to learn how to select the appropriate type of media localization for the type of content that they have at their organization.
Great. So join us for the panel discussion that's part of the main conference. But if you really want to get hands-on and learn the actual tools and increase the accessibility of your own media at your own organization, don't miss the seminar on June 5th. Agnieszka, thanks so much for taking time to talk with me today. I do want to mention that pre-conference session does require a separate registration, but it's part of the main Lokeworld registration. Just make sure that you select the media localization seminar on June 5th. Thanks to all the viewers out there for watching today, and thanks for taking time to talk with me, Agnieszka.
Thanks for having me, and see you in Dublin.
I can't wait to see you in Dublin. Have a great day, okay?